everybody! It's time for episode 2 from the series of videos, Reading Out Loud, the book, But I Know I Love You. If you didn't see the first episode, go back. Let's start in the middle. Anyway, it's another chapter today, and I think you're gonna like it. Such a beautiful love story so far. Well, and they're still together, so it's still a good love story even today. But we're gonna go back to the beginning. Yeah. Okay.
Back to the beginning. My whole life I've really liked being around kids. One of my earliest memories is imagining what it would be like to have a family. For whatever reason, I've always had a lot of patience with them. I guess it was because I somehow knew that I was born to be a husband and a father. Even as a kid myself, I would wonder what it would be like to be a dad. I thought about how I would teach a kid the things I knew, how I would listen to him or her, how we would celebrate the milestones of growing up. Heck, I even thought about what it would be like to be a grandfather. I just knew that one day I was going to have a family of my own. I also knew that when the time came to make that commitment, I would make it with everything in my being. The other thing I've always known about myself is that I'm good at fixing things. If it's broken, I consider it a personal challenge to figure out how to repair it. My family comes from a long line of car lovers, so tinkering with cars was built into my life, but fixing stuff was always a part of who I was. So it wasn't a big stretch when, after a year of college, I took a job as a Safe-Light auto glass repair technician. Yes, I was one of those guys you see in the commercials, going out and fixing broken car and truck windows. I really liked my job. I was proud to be among the top technicians in my district, and I took pride in my ability to fix any broken windshield quickly and easily. Once my love of fixing things and kids intersected on the job. I was working near a school when a teacher brought her class out to watch. She asked if I minded, and to be honest, I was kind of flattered. I gave an impromptu lesson on how to install car windows. The kids watched with fascination as I took out the cracked windshield and replaced it with a new one. I could tell most of them had no idea that car windows were removable. When I was done, the teacher commented that I had been really good with the kids. I thanked her and went on to the next job. Now that I think back, I realize she was hinting that I might want to ask her out. But although I always wanted to be a husband and a father, and I knew I was good with kids, I also knew that wasn't the right time. Even into my late 20s, I was content to be Uncle Steve to my nieces and nephews and the children of some of my friends. I always figured that when the time came, I'd be ready. But I waited so long, some of my family, like my mom, began to wonder if the time would ever come. The right time began one ordinary afternoon in August of 2009. If you've ever been to Michigan in the late summer, you know that the heat and humidity can be brutal, especially when you've been working outside. When Friday rolled around, I was totally ready to kick back, watch some TV, and relax in the air conditioning. My roommate was gone, so I was looking forward to some alone time with my favorite college football teams. I drove home, changed clothes, and settled in on the couch. I was trying to decide if there were some leftovers in the refrigerator I could heat up, or if I should order a pizza when my phone rang. I'm sure there was a brief moment when I thought about ignoring it, but I picked up. "Hey, Steve, what are you doing tonight?" my buddy asked. Not much, just hanging out. Why? Some of us are getting together for dinner at Legends. Want to come? I hesitated, and he added, Come on, you need to get out. Nah, I said. I'm really beat. I think I'm just going to stay home. Next time, okay? I could hear the disappointment in his voice as he said, Well, if you change your mind, we'll be at Legends, like I said. I hung up the phone and began flipping through the TV channels, looking for a football game to watch. None of the matchups really caught my attention, and the thought that maybe I should meet up with my buddies crossed my mind for a second, but I dismissed it. I was debating what toppings to put on the pizza when, all of a sudden, it felt like someone was shouting in my mind, Steve, get off that couch, put on some decent clothes, and go to the restaurant. Now, I'm a pretty practical guy, so this seemed like nonsense. I ignored it and continued debating between pepperoni and sausage. But the thought wouldn't go away. In fact, it got louder. This time, I swear I heard it say, Steve, get off that couch, put on some decent clothes, and get to the restaurant. Again, I dismissed it, but it kept coming back. In fact, it got more insistent. Get off that couch. I figured I was just tired or overheated and was imagining things, but the thought never let up. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. I gave up. I flipped off the TV and headed to the shower. All the time I was getting cleaned up, I kept thinking that this was just crazy, that I should just stay home like I had planned. Every time I hesitated, the thought returned, Go to Legends. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before, and to be honest, I'm thankful it's never happened again. For whatever reason, I put on dressier clothes than I would usually wear to an impromptu gathering, hopped in my truck, and drove to Legends. Now, Legends is a popular local sports bar known for its beer, wings, and big screen TVs. All the way over there, I kept thinking that this was just the craziest thing I'd ever done, but I decided to make the best of it. After all, I'd been thinking about ordering a pizza, and Legends was also famous for its great pizza. I decided I'd get a bite and a beer and then head back home to my couch. My friends were all gathered at a table in the back behind the pool tables, and they waved me over. I knew most of the people who were there that day, but sitting near one end of a long table was this gorgeous girl I'd never met. Her dark brown hair fell in curls over her shoulders, and her green eyes flashed with a combination of mischief and strength that hit me like the proverbial ton of bricks. I said a general, "Hi, guys," to the table, and then focused on the girl. "Hello," I said, trying not to sound too awkward. "I'm Steve." "I'm Camre. Nice to meet you," she said, holding out her hand. I recognized her name because we had a lot of mutual friends who had mentioned her now and then, but we had never been in the same place at the same time. Looking back, it's funny that we had never met before, but now I realize it just wasn't the right time before that night. We shook hands, and I sat down in a vacant seat, 2 chairs over from her. At first I talked with the guy between us, but I kept looking over at Camre. Finally, I leaned over him and asked her a few standard questions, like where she worked. I barely remember her answers because I was immediately lost in her smile. As we waited for our meals, we talked about the usual stuff, the weather, football, the crazy people I met on my job. We just kept leaning across the guy between us, talking about anything and everything, until finally he gave up and, with a knowing grin, moved over a seat so we could be together. I immediately hopped into his vacant chair without missing a sentence. "So, do you have a pet?" I asked. "A Newfoundland," she said. "Oh, what kind of dog is that?" "Big, black dog," she said. "I've always had a Newfoundland. My grandmother started the Newfoundland Club of San Diego, and my family has bred them for 40 years. "Oh, wow," I said. "They are the sweetest dogs." "I don't know that I've ever seen a Newfoundland." "We call them Newfies," she said. "They're really good with kids." "Cool," I said. "How good are they with boyfriends?" I wondered. When I look back, I'm amazed at how quickly we hit it off. We kept talking, and again, it sounds like a cliche, but time stopped. I don't even remember what I ate, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't pizza. Camre probably had something with chicken. Chicken is still one of her favorite foods. We were just chit-chatting back and forth without stop. Apparently, it became obvious that we were really into each other because none of our friends even tried to join us. By the end of the meal, it felt like just a few minutes had passed. That's how absorbed I was in our conversation. Later, I asked Camre about that first meeting, and she agreed that something special had happened, something that we both felt, but couldn't quite put into words. Somehow, we both knew that this was a pivotal moment in our lives. When dinner was over, I wasn't ready to let her go home, so I asked her if she was going to go to the bonfire one of our friends was having at his house. Having a bonfire is a summer and fall activity in the part of Michigan where we live, so going to a fire would be a natural continuation of the evening. I think I held my breath until she said she would meet at our friend's house. I've never asked her what she was thinking at the time, but I know that I was thinking that if she had said she wasn't going, I wouldn't have known what to do. I just didn't want to stop talking with her. I like to think she felt the same way. We drove our separate cars to Lake Fenton, one of several lakes in our area of Michigan. It's a popular recreation area where people come to water ski, swim, sail, and fish. We pulled up in front of a 3-story glass-fronted house sitting on 100 feet of lakefront at the end of the road. In my job, I got to see a lot of houses, but this one was especially nice. Even though I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, I had always loved the outdoors, and I remember thinking that one day I'd like to have a house on a lake. At the time, I wondered if Camre would like to live on a lake. We parked our vehicles and walked together to the fire pit at the edge of the lake. Sometimes people think that it's easy for a guy to make small talk, but trust me, when you are falling in love, your tongue has a mind of its own. I think I said something stupid like, "Nice night for a fire," but fortunately I can't quite remember what else I might have said. What I can remember is the heavy feel of the summer air on my face and the smell of burning leaves and damp wood. I remember the sound of gently lapping water from the shore combined with the crackle of the fire and the murmur of voices. And I remember Camre's smile. People were milling about, watching the sparks from the first fly into the darkening sky. Camre and I pulled up a couple of chairs and sat down close enough to feel the heat and keep the mosquitoes away. I wanted to be sure I was close enough so that the light would let me see every feature of her face. We began to talk, and talk, and talk. Time slid away as we talked about everything imaginable. As the night wore on and the fire started to burn down into the glowing embers, the voices around us began to die away. It was after midnight when I realized most of our friends had already called it a night, but I was still focused on Camre. I didn't want to be too pushy, but I wanted to know everything about her, not just things like where she worked, but about her dreams and hopes. Finally, as the last embers were glowing, I said, "I guess we'd better get going." We walked back to our cars under a star-studded sky, and I remember thinking I wanted to kiss her, but I also didn't want to be too pushy. Finally, I leaned over, kissed her on the cheek, and asked her for her number. I'll admit my heart was racing a bit, and I probably was holding my breath as I waited for her response. She smiled that smile that even today makes my heart skip, and gave her number to me. As she drove off and I climbed into the cab of my truck, I rested my hands on the steering wheel and took a deep breath. I knew right then that she was the reason I had to get off my couch and go to the restaurant that day. I knew she was the one I had been waiting for.
What'd I tell ya? I bet you can't wait for the next chapter. Yeah. We can't either. We get to read ahead, though. So, of course, if you want to read ahead, down in the description of the video is a link to buy a copy of the book for yourself. Yeah, you can read along with us. Okay. Anyway, hope everybody's still doing good, and we'll see you soon. Bye.